Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this hearing. I think it is one of the things we need to be focused on is what is our leadership going to be as a nation in this area. So one of my concerns, and I've talked about this with the chairman, is what I see as spectrum squatting with our federal agencies. They control most of the spectrum assets, and they are failing to optimize this. And I have for years advocated that we do a good inventory so we know who is using what spectrum where, and then be able to recoup it, because it does not matter what project is being worked on, whether it is wireless, whether it is the MUOS system, whether it is LEO. Everybody in the DoD is working with the private sector because they are leading the innovation. And for federal agencies, Mr. Chairman, to squat on this spectrum and to not use it and to not want to yield it back and not want anybody to know what they've got, it disadvantages us as a nation. And we know that recouping it, going through the auction process, would yield billions and billions of dollars, as much as $100 billion. And we need that because we are in a race with China when it comes to leading in this area. And we don't have time to waste, and we don't have time for squatters to bicker with what they're going to do with this spectrum. Mr. Pearl, let me come to you. This last World Radio Conference was a hot mess for the U.S. We were unprepared. We had not done our homework. And if we're going to continue to be a world leader, we are going to have to be prepared. You mentioned this in your testimony, and I appreciated that you did, because I think it was embarrassing that we were unprepared for the leadership road. So I want to hear from you, and if you want to submit this in writing, I would appreciate that. But the lessons we should have learned from this last one and the steps that we should be taking to prepare for the 27 WRC.
Yeah, so I think one of the lessons we learned is, so the next work is work 27, and that's tomorrow in real terms, which is the preparatory process is incredibly quick, and arriving at positions is gonna give you a huge advantage vis-a-vis China. And so I think that it's just important to have Congress, when it reauthorizes FCC auction authority, as well as the White House, to make sure that these issues are resolved early and that you don't have the U.S. coming in late with positions. I also think that it's important as we're—
And I think that we know what those positions are, rather than squishing through the whole thing. That'd be helpful.
Yep.
Okay. Homework for each of you. You know, there are disputes, interagency disputes about how to use spectrum. So each of you have touched on this, but in writing, I want from you what your recommendation would be to resolve these disputes. We have to recoup the spectrum. We have got to look at how we slice these bands and put more, Mr. Clark, as you were saying, into that bandwidth. So help us with your best thoughts on that. Mr. Pearl, I want to come back to you on AI, because when we talk about AI and quantum and the utilizations that are there, we know more spectrum is needed. And in Tennessee, I repeatedly hear from innovators, whether they're working logistics, they're working on something for DOE or DOD or healthcare. They talk a good bit about this. But with AI, I think it's important to get on the record how spectrum constraints would actually hamper AI development and deployment.
Yeah, absolutely happy to submit that on the record. I think one of the important points is it would hamper things not only on the commercial side, but also on the DoD side of things, where there are really interesting AI applications for first responders, in terrorist attacks and things like that, and leveraging it to make the right decisions. And that is something that's directly applicable to what DoD does in the battlefield. So, another example is, we've talked about spectrum, but to really advance, what we need AI to do is to be able to take all the sources of information, spectrum, OPSEC, cyberspace, thermal imaging, just all of these things, and generate real actionable insights. And we can't do that unless we have those commercial technologies and we're winning the AI race with China.
Now, add to that the satellite systems. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.